In the darkest days of World War II, the Atlantic Ocean became a graveyard. A silent, merciless hunter prowled beneath the waves, the German U-boat. These wolf packs were devastatingly effective, sinking thousands of Allied ships, choking the vital supply lines that kept Britain alive. For every ship that went down, lives were lost, and the war effort teetered on the brink. The Allies were desperate. They needed a miracle. But what if the solution wasn't a bigger gun or a faster ship? What if it was an idea so radical, so utterly bizarre, that it was almost dismissed as madness? This is the story of how a seemingly insane concept, borrowed not from military strategy but from the natural world, turned the tide of the Battle of the Atlantic. It's a story of illusion, deception, and a wild gamble that paid off in the most spectacular way. At the heart of the U-boat's success was its advanced listening gear, the hydrophone. This underwater ear could detect the telltale sound of a convoy's propellers from miles away, guiding the wolf packs to their prey long before the ships were visible. The Allies tried everything, sailing in zigzag patterns, developing early sonar, and deploying escort vessels. But the U-boats were always one step ahead. The noise of a massive convoy was like a dinner bell ringing across the ocean. The Allies couldn't hide the sound, so they faced a grim reality. They were broadcasting their own doom. Enter a Canadian naval officer named Frank C.V.S. He wasn't a high-ranking admiral or a celebrated weapons designer. He was a thinker, an innovator, and he was consumed by one question. If you can't eliminate the noise, can you disguise it? His attention turned to a peculiar phenomenon. He noticed that the sound of a small, fast motorboat wasn't just quieter than a large freighter. It was a different kind of sound. The high-pitched whine of its propellers was distinct from the low, rhythmic thrum of a large merchant vessel. This observation sparked a revolutionary idea. What if you could make a massive convoy sound like something else entirely? Something harmless? What if you could create an acoustic illusion? The concept was met with skepticism. In the corridors of power, where military doctrine was rigid, the idea of tricking a U-boat's hydrophones sounded like science fiction. But with losses mounting and no other solutions in sight, desperation opened the door to innovation. The plan was audacious. It was called the Canadian Naval Project, but its code name was far more descriptive. Project Habakkuk. No, wait, that was the iceberg aircraft carrier. This one was even stranger. It was nicknamed the Foxer. The official name was the FXR acoustic decoy. The device itself was deceptively simple. 2 or 3 noise-making metal bars, often hollow pipes filled with metal pellets or featuring specifically designed ridges. These bars were towed hundreds of meters behind a ship. As the ship moved, water rushed past these bars, causing them to vibrate and clang together, creating a cacophony of high-frequency noise. The sound was specifically engineered to be far louder and more attention-grabbing than the ship's own propellers. The goal wasn't to be quiet. It was to be obnoxiously, irresistibly loud in a very specific way. But why would making more noise help? This is where the genius of the deception lay. The German U-boats used acoustic torpedoes, specifically the G7Es, nicknamed Sonnenkönig, or Wren. These were fire-and-forget weapons. Once launched, an internal guidance system would lock onto the loudest propeller noise it could detect and steer the torpedo directly towards it. It was a deadly effective piece of technology. The Foxer decoy turned the torpedo's greatest strength into its fatal flaw. When a U-boat fired an acoustic torpedo at a convoy protected by Foxer, the torpedo's sensors would be overwhelmed. The loudest sound wasn't the rhythmic churn of the ship's propellers anymore. It was the high-pitched, chaotic racket of the Foxer decoy trailing far behind the vessel. The torpedo, dutifully following its programming, would ignore the actual ship and chase the decoy instead. It would pursue the noisemaker until its fuel ran out, or it detonated harmlessly at the end of its run, hundreds of meters away from its intended target. The first deployments were nerve-wracking. Sailors watched as torpedo wakes, once a death sentence, veered away from their hulls and sped towards the churning water behind them. It must have felt like magic. Reports from the fleet were astonishing. Ship after ship reported torpedoes exploding in their wake, missing them completely. The U-boat commanders were baffled. Their infallible wonder weapon was suddenly failing, chasing ghosts in the water. They reported hearing strange screw-like noises and baffling interference. Unaware they were being tricked by a few simple pieces of metal being dragged through the water. The effectiveness was undeniable. The introduction of the Foxer decoy in late 1943 caused a dramatic drop in the success rate of acoustic torpedoes. It's estimated that the device reduced the effectiveness of the Zaunkönig by as much as 75%. It wasn't just a defensive measure, it was a psychological one. It sowed confusion and doubt among the U-boat crews, whose morale was already being strained by improved Allied air cover and convoy tactics. Of course, the Foxer wasn't perfect. It was noisy for the towing ship's own sonar operators, making it harder for them to detect the U-boats in the first place. It also slightly reduced the ship's speed and maneuverability. But these were small prices to pay for survival. The device was a game-changer, a crucial piece of the complex puzzle that led to Allied victory in the Battle of the Atlantic. The story of the Foxer is a powerful reminder that in times of crisis, the most effective solutions can come from the most unexpected places. It wasn't about brute force, but about cleverness. It was a triumph of lateral thinking, of understanding your enemy's technology so well that you can turn it against them. A simple, almost laughably low-tech idea, born from an observation of sound, ended up saving countless lives and protecting the vital arteries of the Allied war effort. It proves that sometimes the most insane idea is the one that changes everything.